This evening, we're a text amendment, which is titled Adult Use Cannabis Proposed Text Amendment. And here's how we're going to proceed. And this is based on conferring with about our procedure this evening. We're going to have a presentation by the staff, questions by the board, and public comment. There are three ways that you can make public comment tonight. One, you can talk this evening, subject to some limitations that I'll announce. Two, you can submit some written petition or whatever. And three, you can supplement your comments with writings addressed to the staff, which would then be presented to the county board and development committee. So with respect to the public comment section, I don't think this is going to be an issue, but we have an overall time limit of 30 minutes with each speaker given 3 minutes to speak. I might, since I only see 2 people in the audience, and assuming there's no crowd that rushes in, I might be a little bit flexible with that, but that's what I've been told is the procedural rule. And then again, written comment would be addressed to the staff and transmitted to the development committee. So with that, I'll recognize Mr. Voss. Well, and Jessica, you're going to make comments as well?
Yes.
Well, will you two be sworn in?
You solemnly swear affirm the testimony about to give at this cause now hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
I do.
Okay, what about exhibits?
Jessica is going to tender those when she comes up to speak.
Okay.
That's right. So I'll get started. My name is Paul Voss. I'm the Planning and Zoning Administration Coordinator for DuPage County Building and Zoning. And as we mentioned, Jessica Police is the Zoning Administration Coordinator. She will be presenting the text amendments for you tonight. I'm going to say a few minor words and lay a foundation for how we got here relative to our process relative to making zoning changes to the county zoning ordinance. The county gains its authority to regulate land use by the Illinois state statutes, commonly referred to as the state zoning enabling statute. And it allows county to regulate and develop land use regulations for legal uses in furtherance of a compelling government interest, while at the same time acknowledging that if a person owns a piece of property, they are vested with property rights. So we're balancing those two things, the compelling government interest against the property rights of a property owner. Typical compelling government interest is protecting property values, protecting and mitigating against one use on another use and against adjacent adjacent roadways, protecting and ensuring quality of life and ensuring a stable environment. Now, the county zoning ordinance is the document that the county board and staff use to regulate land use authorized by the state law. And we do that by dividing the properties in DuPage County up into zones or districts. That is one way that we are able to allow like uses to coexist and operate in specific zoning areas. In addition, we mitigate the impacts on property values and quality of life and adjacent roadways by establishing reasonable regulations such as setback requirements, distance between like uses, and further distance between unlike uses. In addition, regulating through height, lot size, and building size requirements on a lot. In the past years, our staff has come before the Zoning Board of Appeals at the request of the county board to present zoning amendments to the county zoning regulations relative to legal land uses. And in the past, some of those legal land uses have included very unique land uses that have unique characteristics or extraordinary impacts, but are nevertheless legal uses. These uses require reasonable regulation, while at the same time, we must ensure that there are reasonable opportunities, locations for these legal uses to operate in the county, in the unincorporated areas of the county. Now, the land use regulations we are presenting to you tonight involve adult use cannabis businesses. In 2020, the state adopted legislation called the Adult Use Cannabis Tax Act, which authorized the legal growing, sale, and consumption of cannabis in the state of Illinois. And it provides, among other things, that local governments, municipal, county, home rule, non-home rule governments can actually require that cannabis businesses not be allowed in a local jurisdiction. That's a little bit antithetical to what we typically understand as zoning regulations, namely that it is a legal use. We have to allow it somewhere in the county by right or by conditional use with regulations that further a compelling government interest. However, in the state of Illinois, there is the ability to opt out of allowing for cannabis business or opt in. Over the past 3 years, the county board, through its finance committee, which is effectively acting as a committee of the whole because all of the county board members sit on the county finance committee, and the building and zoning department's parent committee, the DuPage County Development Committee, have deliberated on the policy issue of whether to opt in or opt out to allow for cannabis businesses in the unincorporated area. And in June of this year, the county board opted in to allow the legal use of cannabis in the unincorporated areas. In addition, by resolution, they requested and required that the county staff, working with the county development committee, develop land use regulations to mitigate some of the state requirements that Jessica will be talking about, and also to address some of the concerns that were developed over the last 3 years at the various finance and development committees. But to be clear, the reason that we're before you tonight is the county board has opted in to allow cannabis businesses as legal uses in the unincorporated area. So tonight, we bring to you, at the request of the county board, the proposed text amendments. The state statute and our own county zoning ordinance requires that in order to amend the county zoning ordinance, we are required to bring before the zoning board of appeals at public hearing the proposed text amendments, to vet them at public hearing with ultimate review by the development committee and ultimate disposition by the full county board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica and Felice. She'll tend to the exhibits that we have for you tonight, and I'll pass those out as well. And we're also going to share with you a PowerPoint presentation that is identical to the paper PowerPoint presentation that we'll be presenting tonight, that Jessica will be presenting tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Infelice, Infelice. Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I will be tendering our exhibits to the board. Exhibit 1 will be a hard copy of the PowerPoint. Exhibit 2 will be a memorandum containing additional information. Exhibit 3 will be the proposed text amendments. Exhibit 4 will be the dispensary candidate sites map. And Exhibit 5 will be the cultivation candidate sites map. This evening, we will be going over the adult use cannabis proposed text amendments for the DuPage County zoning ordinance. And then you can follow along as well with the PowerPoint before you or on the screen. So for our agenda this evening, first we will be reviewing the state and county action thus far on adult use cannabis. Next, we will be discussing the types of cannabis business establishments, which coincides with the current state regulations. Then we will be going over the zoning guidelines proposed by the DuPage County Board, the proposed text amendments that are up for review this evening, and candidate locations for adult use cannabis facilities. After the presentation, Paul Haas will be available for any questions. Regarding adult use cannabis in Illinois, effective January 1st, 2020, the state passed the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. This legalized the possession and private use of cannabis for Illinois residents. Also effective in the act, the state preserved local zoning authority to either prohibit or significantly limit cannabis businesses through reasonable zoning regulations. Through this, municipalities and counties may designate the time, place, manner, and number of business operations through the zoning regulations. Originally, in the 2020 Act, there was a subsection that required adult use and medical cannabis dispensaries were to not be located within 1,000 feet of a property line of any schools, daycares, or group home. But note that in 2021, the state removed this subsection, and there's no longer a state requirement for a minimum distance from schools, daycares, and group homes. In June of this year, as Paul discussed, DuPage County approved a resolution directing the County Development Committee to develop a permitting program and opted into allowing cannabis cultivation in retail and unincorporated DuPage County. However, before cultivation and retail sale of adult cannabis begins in unincorporated, the resolution directed that text amendments be created, which is why we are before you today. Moving into the types of cannabis business establishments, the state of Illinois issues licenses for the following types of adult use cannabis businesses, which include craft growers, cultivation centers, dispensing organizations, infusers, and transporters. We will be going over each of these as they're each addressed in the state act as well as in the text amendments before you. We have also split up the types of businesses into two types of groups for clarification. Group one will be growing facilities, which are known as the craft growers and cultivation centers by the state. And group two is retail facilities, meaning dispensaries, infusers or infusing organizations, and transporters, also known as transporting organizations. Namely, the difference here is that craft growers are on a smaller scale in relation to growing facilities. They are permitted up to 5,000 square feet of canopy space for plants in a flowering stage, but can go up in increments of 3,000 square feet, maxing at 14,000 as determined by the Department of Agriculture. Additionally, cultivation centers are larger growing facilities with no more than 210,000 square feet of canopy space. So craft growers are much smaller, and cultivation centers are the larger growing facilities. The next group for retail facilities include dispensing organizations, infusing organizations, and transporting. A dispensing organization is operated a business that is licensed by the IDFPR to acquire cannabis from licensed cannabis business establishments for the purpose of selling or dispensing. Infusers are a facility that is licensed by the Illinois Department of Agriculture to directly incorporate cannabis or cannabis concentrate into products for formulation. The most familiar reference to these are edible cannabis or gummies, sometimes people refer to them as. The third and final facility would be a cannabis transporting organization or transporter. And these are organizations that are also licensed by the Illinois Department of Agriculture to transport cannabis on behalf of cannabis businesses. It is important to note, though, that transporters are the only authorized transporter to deliver cannabis from cultivation centers and craft growers to either infusers or dispensing, vice versa. Next, we will discuss the current state regulations. The state goes over each type of business and certain regulations for these. For example, for craft growers, and you'll see on your PowerPoint, these are some of the requirements by the state for this use. They are not permitted in an area zoned for residential use. They cannot be located within 1,500 feet of another craft grower or cultivation center. All of the cultivation must occur in an enclosed locked facility, so these are not growing out in the open. As we discussed, there's a square footage maximum as determined by the Department of Agriculture. They can process cannabis and concentrates and cannabis infused products. They also need to implement a security plan by the Illinois State Police. That includes access controls, perimeter intrusion detection, and then also accessible law enforcement. That video needs to be available 24 hours a day. And then any cannabis harvested needs to be logged and entered into a data collection system packaged under state law. The next facility is a cultivation center. Once again, similar to craft grower, all cultivation must occur indoors in a locked facility. This is the larger cultivation, so they have no more than 210,000 square feet of canopy space. And then similar to craft grower, they can process, they need to follow a same Illinois State Police security plan. They also need to include security documents or operating documents for procedures for the cultivation center, including physical inventory and accurate record keeping. And then also any cannabis harvested does need to be entered into a data collection system. Moving into dispensing organizations, all dispensing organizations must pre-qualify with a conditional adult use dispensing organization license. Once you are awarded this conditional license, you then have 180 days to select a physical storefront location and obtain a full license from the state. Dispensing organizations, all cannabis and cannabis infused products must be obtained from an Illinois registered adult use cultivation center, craft grower, infuser. It cannot take that from out of state. Everything needs to be from in state of Illinois. They also, per the state, need to be located at least 1,500 feet from a pre-existing adult use dispensing organization. And the only difference for that is we have something called a social equity applicant or social equity justice involved applicant, and we'll go over that later, but that's per the state. The methods of sale that are prohibited are drive-through windows, vending machines. They cannot manufacture, process, or produce cannabis infused products, so they can only sell. And then they can only accept cannabis deliveries from a certain restricted access area. Additionally, continued for dispensing, the state has operating hours for these businesses from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. All of the outside lighting and inside must be in good working order. And then they should also cannot operate if video surveillance is inoperative. So for 24 hours a day, that video surveillance needs to be available to the Illinois State Police. They also need to contract with a private security contractor to have on-site security for all hours of operation. Cannot have fewer than 2 people working at any time, and then cannot sell any live plant material. Moving on to infuser organizations. These also cannot be located in areas zoned for residential use. They also need to be enclosed in a locked facility, have a similar security plan by the Illinois State Police. They may share premises with a craft grower or dispensing organization, and the state has a certain criteria. If an infuser also wants to share premises with a craft grower or dispensing organization, all of the material, currency, cannabis needs to be stored in a separate vault. And then moving on to transporters. So they may not use a commercial motor vehicle with a weight rating over 10,001 pounds. And it also cannot be a visible van with a logo. So it needs to be a plain sight vehicle without any markings or logos containing a cannabis business establishment. All of the cannabis in these vehicles needs to be transported in an enclosed locked storage compartment. It needs to be logged into a data collection entry system. And then no one under the age of 21 can be in the vehicle at the time of transport, or any person that is not the transporting agent that is licensed by the state can be in the vehicle. Additionally, the State Act includes certain equity initiatives called a social equity and social equity justice applicant. These are equity programs to assist those who have been adversely impacted by the enforcement of drug-related laws. And the reason we bring that up today is because per state law, if you are a social equity applicant, you can actually be within 1,500 feet of an existing dispensing organization per state law. And then on the screen and in your packets, you'll see here's a snapshot of a couple of cannabis business establishments in the state existing already. The top left is Lincoln, Illinois Cultivation Center, just showing that it's a completely enclosed block facility. The Delavan, Illinois Cultivation Center, and then Lincoln once again on the bottom right. And then the top right is an Addison dispensing organization. And the bottom left is just an example of how infusers complete the products. Transitioning into the guidelines which were used to incorporate into the proposed text amendments before you tonight. per required and existing state regulations, which were discussed at county board discussions on the matter. DuPage County board members have provided guidance based on 2 finance committee meetings, which were essentially a committee of the whole, where all board members were present, and 2 development committee meetings. At the 4 meetings, the board members provided the following guidelines, namely that cannabis businesses must be located on larger roadways, not serving residential neighborhoods or directly running through municipal downtown cores. These roadways are known as other principal arterials per DuPage Division of Transportation. They are permitted only in non-residential zoning districts. That dispensaries and similar businesses be located on zoning lots at least 25,000 square feet in size to accommodate for parking and traffic. To require reasonable separation from uses serving vulnerable or impressionable populations, primarily primary and secondary schools, daycare centers, and group homes. And that they are not located on governmental controlled lands. So this is forest preserve or park districts. We'll next go over the DuPage proposed text amendments relative to adult use cannabis business establishments. The first group is the growing facilities, which were the craft growers and cultivation centers. As we just discussed, these were to be permitted by right in all non-residential zoning districts located adjacent to other principal arterial roadways. So these are roadways most commonly known as Route 83, Route 53, North Avenue, Lake Street, Roosevelt Road, just for example. They would be located on a zoning lot containing not less than 5 acres of land area based on the current county zoning code relative to a comparable agricultural use. So per the county zoning ordinance, agricultural uses require a minimum of 5 acres of land area. And similarly, growing facilities such as craft growers and cultivation centers would be a comparable use based on the activity. The setbacks for this would be that all buildings would be set back not less than 150 feet from the front lot line and not less than 30 feet from any side or corner or rear lot line. And this is again comparable to an agricultural use. That the use should be located at least 1,500 feet from another craft grower or cultivation center and located at least 2,500 feet from a pre-existing public or private nursery school, preschool, primary, secondary school, daycare home, or group home. Also, we would require that a certification that the adult use cannabis establishment meets the state requirements, and this affidavit would be submitted at time of building permit application, which would include security protocols listed in the state act. And just as a reminder, any non-residential zoning districts include B1 local business, B2 general, O office, office research, I1 light industrial, and I2 general industrial. The second group, which we discussed, is retail, which focuses on dispensing organizations and infuser and transporting. These would also be permitted by right in all non-residential zoning districts and located on the adjacent to other principal arterial roadway. The minimum lot size for these would be 25,000 square feet, and that's based on the DuPage County zoning code. 25,000 square feet is actually the smallest size of lot that is permitted in a non-residential zoning district. The setbacks would be that they would meet the bulk requirements of each individual district. So setbacks, parking, FAR requirements, and that they be located at least 1,500 feet from a pre-existing public, private nursery school, preschool, the primary and secondary schools, care homes, and group homes. We do have a provision in the ordinance, though, that if it is a social equity applicant, they can be closer than the 1,500 feet. Also, these cannot be operated in an existing single-family home or dwelling unit. That's per the state as well. And that they also submit a certification for an affidavit with our office. The verification affidavit, which is located in Exhibit 2 at the back, is a sample. It would be submitted with any building permit application. And once again, that would have the authorizer certifying that they have met the state of Illinois requirements, their name, signature, the proposed potential adult use cannabis location, and then a notary signature. Next, we will discuss the possible candidate locations for adult use cannabis facilities. Adult use cannabis businesses are dispersed throughout the state using the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics region, also known as the BLS region. Per the state of Illinois, cannabis business establishment licenses are dispersed in each of the state's 17 BLS regions as determined by this region's percentage of population. In total, there will be 500 recreational dispensary licenses to be distributed. The first wave was issued 110 licenses, and the second wave included 185 conditional licenses. DuPage County is located in the BLS region known as Chicago, Naperville, Elgin. And currently DuPage County Incorporated has 10 dispensary licenses, and the region was awarded 110 conditional licenses in July of 2022. Working with DuPage County's GIS department, we have identified a total of 107 dispensary candidate sites, with most located in the county's District 6 area. We have also identified 8 total cultivation sites, which are also clustered in District 6. And then Paul will be bringing up a map that's available in the presentation, and this will be available online. And when we zoom in, you'll see that any orange on the map represents candidate dispensary sites, and any yellow represents potential cultivation sites. And then the D represents existing dispensaries. And once again, these are mostly clustered in District 6 for the county. And that is it. Thank you. Paul Haas will be available for any questions that you might have.
Okay, are there any questions from any of the board members? Oh, now I see Janice. Ms. Anderson, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Does any number? So I just like to have a little further clarification on one small point. I can't think of any text amendment which dealt with new uses or changed uses or whatever, in which I have not raised this point. But could you explain a little bit about the deliberations of the in connection with the development of this ordinance, which caused it to be a permitted use rather than a conditional use? Because I have indicated in the past that I have some appetite for conditional use for for a few years, and then if it works out and we find through public hearings that the conditional use is for sites that it's all routine, then permitted use. But this comes to us as a permitted use from the beginning. So could you just explain the rationale?
Sure. As you know, if use is permitted by right, if a developer meets all of the bulk regulations of the zoning code and all the land use regulations of the zoning code, they proceed directly to the building department to apply for building permits. If it's allowed by conditional use, that means that the county has inherently indicated that the use itself is an acceptable use in a particular zoning district, but it is the operations of that use and perhaps the ownership of that use and how that ownership would operate the facility that the county board would like to vet at public hearing, and then ultimately have it reviewed, approved, or denied at the county board level. The committee of the whole, the finance committee, and also the development committee debated that issue. And the rationale for keeping it as an as of right use was that this type of use, albeit a new use, is similar to a land use that is like a liquor license. And the rules, the bulk regulations and some of the land use considerations, such as allowing them only in non-residential zoning districts, allowing them only on other principal arterial roadways, the distance requirements from what we are calling protected uses, other dispensaries, other cultivation facilities, and places where vulnerable populations are concentrated, schools and daycare facilities. The feeling was that those regulations were enough to mitigate against the concerns that otherwise could be brought in conditional use proceeding. And they were similar to rules and regulations that we have for liquor establishments, whether it be serving liquor or simply dispensing liquor at restaurants or bars, or providing the sale of liquor at gas stations or grocery stores. So it was for that reason that the county board members felt that that these should be allowed as permitted use, because there were enough protections built into the sort of bulk regulations to mitigate against those concerns.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. No other questions? Do both of you want to make a comment now?
Yes, please.
Okay, can I ask that you be sworn in? In case you give any testimony.
Would you both raise your right hands, please? You do solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give at this cause and our hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God.
I do.
Let's go over the rules here. What do you anticipate for time? Because I don't want to ring the gong in 3 minutes.
3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, that's
Fine.
all right. So could you give us your name, spell your name for the record? Tell
Sure.
us, and then state your position.
My name is Chris Pisak, CHRIS. Pisak, P as in Paul, E as in Edward, C as in Charlie, A as in Adam, K as in Kevin. I'm here as mayor of the village of Lisle. And asking a few considerations as zoning board of appeals considers this, and then further as it goes to the county board. And primarily that it's that the planning jurisdiction of adjacent municipalities or municipalities that are adjacent to unincorporated land that may be under consideration for this, that the planning jurisdiction and comprehensive land use plans of those municipalities be considered somewhat in any way possible in the granting of well, if this is as of right, that all goes out the window. So I'm almost asking for a conditional use, because as we find out in our local municipality, we have comprehensive land use plans for office and research areas that are currently residential. And as of right, current property owners can walk into the county, get a permit to build a $500,000 or $750,000 home and obstruct the future planning of an area that's designated as something different. I call them donut holes in the community. We have, in the case of the village of Lisle, we have border agreements with every municipality around us: Naperville, Downers Grove, Woodridge, Glen Ellen, small part of Wheaton. We have property owners that are currently unincorporated that are on the Naperville side of the agreement and can't get water from Naperville. And Lisle can't cross the border because of our agreement with Naperville, and they're left and can't build a house there. On the other hand, we have properties on Route 53, some of them identified on your plan, eligible for dispensaries. And whether a community opts in or opts out, Lisle is currently opted out, Woodridge is opted in, but they affect both communities right at the border there. They also affect all the adjacent residential, with all this. Not technically setbacks, but the distances to uses. These properties along 53 are still small properties, even though they could be consolidated to 25,000 square feet. They abut to incorporated and unincorporated residential parcels. So I think some consideration has to be given to setback to residential. And then lastly, my ask is that the properties identified in the list of eligible properties be further looked at as to availability of water and sewer. If the county has no ability to bring water or sewer service, or there's no independent water or sewer service providers, what we're finding is we just incorporated a home that was built under a county permit, and halfway through construction realized they couldn't get water service, and now they're incorporating in the wild. In situations like that, it would have been much easier up front to identify the case that they can't get water. And even though they're unincorporated, they have to come to the municipality where they ultimately will get water from and work together with them, because now the building was built under one code scenario. And once it gets incorporated, will be enforced by the different authority having jurisdiction. So I asked that some of these additional thoughts be put into this. It's not as simple as just as of right for whoever wants to build it, because there really is no control and there's no notice once it's as of right. There's no notice to any municipality, no neighbors, nobody. And I think the inconsistent uses should also include churches, parks, places where people tend to congregate. If somebody's looking for a high traffic area, even though the highway, the roadway may be high traffic, but gosh, you don't award liquor licenses next to a church or a school because everybody travels there and it's high visibility and that's I think they're better suited away from parks, away from churches, as well as schools and the other uses. So those are my comments. Thank you
very much.
My name is Dr. Joe Sheehan, Joe, last name is spelled Sheehan. I'm the owner and operator of Terry Farms at 28 West 531 Roosevelt Road in Winfield. The plat that's being put up is the 22-acre parcel. You can see here that this is Roosevelt Road. So
what do you anticipate for that?
3 to 5 minutes. So great presentation by the county, and thank you, Chairman and the board, for allowing me to speak. I've been coming to a lot of the county board meetings previously, so I know that's your knowledge on the subject matter is quite limited in terms of everything that's been going on. But in terms of why, just to quickly address the right versus conditional use, there's time limits on these licenses. They were issued on July 22nd, and you only have 180 days. So unless DuPage comes out and says by rights, and you're very unlikely to get anyone that's interested in bringing up this, even one dispensary, because there's just not enough time. So besides everything they said, the setbacks, those have all been mitigated. Paul's been on that for months. That's all done. By right and conditional, it should be right because there's just not enough time. So I'll go through everything else. I'm here about a different subject matter that is not included in this, and that's the on-site consumption. So my Terry Farms is a hemp and honey farm at the moment. It's 22 acres. We've got 25 colonies that we work with City Bees, Bill Whitney, he's from Wheaton. And then we also work with Jet Surf down in West Chicago for part of their honey. We do hemp harvest. So we have a hemp harvest tomorrow with COD. When the county banned cannabis and unincorporated DuPage, significantly impacted my business and basically stunted my growth, the Terry Farms ability to grow. Despite that, we have over 5,000 patients throughout Illinois and have sold hemp in every state, including Guam, shipped to Guam. The cannabis ban is now lifted, basically because they lost $4 million. That's what's concentrated the mine. But on-site consumption allowing me to do a lounge is still banned. As per the previous county meetings, I've been advocating for a craft grow, dispensary, and lounge for 4 months. It is possibly too late for a dispensary due to the 180 days needed to be operational by the state, since those licenses were issued on July 22nd. However, it's still possible for me to do the cannabis lounge if on-site consumption is added to the adult use cannabis cultivation center regulations as an additional line item. Specifically, F, on-site consumption will be allowed if the above regulations are met. Cannabis lounges have been successful in other counties, and this board can right now allow me the ability to test it. I will work to make it a major success and not anything that will harm anyone. I'm a responsible doctor and have had many lives in my hands before, but I need this to basically prove the business model and as part of my business. The added line item will allow me to progress with my development, and I would have a backup if I can't secure a dispensary license in such a short period of time because of the county having previously banned it. You've shut everyone out. I'm the only one here looking for anything. By adding it to adults cultivation centers, it will also limit the number of sites that a lounge can be achieved on. This will limit the to 8 sites in the county, and look up the 8 sites. You can do it on the GIS software by Paul. They're not even sites that you put a cannabis on. And the 117, all of them in District 6, which is where I plan to put on, they're not places you can put dispensaries. I know, I've looked them up. So basically, this is just about me and whether you're gonna allow me to do my project. I am incurring significant design and site clearance costs without the certainty of obtaining a dispensary license in the 180-day timeframe allocated. We have Keystone Construction already working on designs and how much and costing it up. So the money's being spent, hoping that this is going to go ahead. No one else, to my knowledge, has asked for on-site consumption, and this allows me to go ahead without it being banned totally, and won't force me to continue to plead for it from the county. I also want to note that Cook County has more registered farms than DuPage. I am trying to fund the infrastructure that will also act as a measure for food security in the event of black swan events. You have no farms in central DuPage, and that's going to become a problem if you need food. Lastly, I am hosting College of DuPage Department of Horticulture tomorrow at our farm for our annual hemp and honey harvest from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Our bee guide will be presenting at noon. If anyone is interested in attending tomorrow and seeing my project up close, please contact me at info@caryfarms.com. You can also meet the students that I intend to hire and the job creation I plan to bring to the county. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. There's nothing else from the. You want to add something?
Excellent sound.
Go right ahead.
So, a couple of things. We provided you with 3 exhibits, the group exhibits, which are the maps, the PowerPoint presentation, a memo that dives in a little deeper into some of the regulations, and then exhibit 3, which is the actual text. I just want to make clear that everything that Jessica presented in the PowerPoint was a synopsis of what's in the text. There's nothing that has been added. It's all in the text, but rather than go over the lengthy text, we wanted to do it in the PowerPoint discussion. The other thing that's important to note, and just to comment to Doctor's presentation, is that when the county board finance committee and the county development committee deliberated on this starting back in 2019, they deliberated from a holistic standpoint. We have to take into consideration the entire unincorporated area, not just the specific area in DuPage County. And also, when developing these rules and regulations, they were developed across the entire scope and breadth of the county, giving opportunities for anybody who was interested in developing one of the 5 licensed cannabis businesses from the state of Illinois, the opportunity to operate in the state of Illinois. I'm sorry, to operate in the unincorporated areas. So to be clear here, this is not intended to be any special legislation for one particular land use, one particular piece of property, but it's intended to take into consideration opportunities for anybody who's interested to operate under reasonable guidelines that were established by county board members that came from the state statute and also came from concerns that were developed from the county board members, from their constituents, and from their partner communities. As Jessica indicated, trying to ensure that anybody who was going to use one of these facilities would not have to go through residential neighborhoods to get there. That's why they're put on principal arterial roadways. Other than if you're coming from a residential community in DuPage County, one of these facilities. And also intending to try and keep these facilities out of the downtown cores of the 39 municipalities that the unincorporated area moves through. Like I said earlier, I want to make crystal clear that this was done in a holistic manner, giving opportunity for anybody who would like to operate one of these 5 licenses in the unincorporated, equal opportunity to do it in a reasonable manner throughout the unincorporated areas.
Okay, and will you be certain, or can we be certain that as this matter proceeds, comments of these 2 speakers will be available to the public committee?
Yeah, they'll be made part of the public hearing record. Yes,
Okay, very good.
thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board members? Then we'll close the public hearing, and that leaves the question of whether we open a voting session, recommendation session, now or in the future. If we do vote this evening, one of our members is not present in person, we have to be present in person to vote, so that's a consideration for me, because Ms. Anderson may want to weigh in on this. So what's the pleasure of the board?
I wish to digest it a little bit and then take it up at the November meeting, if we have that time.
Well, we don't really have that time. We would have to have a special meeting, probably next Wednesday, which is fine with me.
Yeah, you kind of see.
I have a work commitment that night.
We can't do Monday. I know some members are not available Tuesday. We can't do Monday because it's a holiday. We have a fairly full hearing on Thursday. So
You can do Thursday.
is the
I
preference
can do Thursday,
of Wednesday?
Thursday.
Well, Thursday, we already have a hearing. That's a pretty full hearing.
Right. So couldn't we come at 5:30 and do the vote?
What's the consensus of the board?
I think it's been well laid out. They're still gonna have actions at the county level.
Well, but we have to defer. We have one member that wants to deliberate and have a follow-up vote. Yeah, Mr. Haas?
So, Mr. Chairman, staff doesn't have any objection to closing the hearing tonight and going to a recommendation meeting sometime next week. So that's not an issue for the staff.
So let's do Wednesday so that we have two separate clean hearings. So,
She just said she can't do Wednesday.
no, she said she could do this.
Oh, okay.
I cannot make it Wednesday, work commitment. I can make it Thursday for both the recommendation meeting and the public hearing at 6. I mean, why bring us in twice?
I wish you were here this evening. But I know we had a different, so, okay, so I guess we'll do Thursday at 5:30.
Thank you.
But we'll set the matter for recommendation meeting Thursday at 5:30 to proceed our regular meeting. Good, thanks. We're closed for this evening.